This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the first in a long time. I don't know if we've ever actually had an official Environmental Advisory Council meeting. Um, Most of you, all of you know me. I just met Mark, but I'm Chris Stroller. I'm the long range planner. I'm in community development here at the township. I'm thrilled to have this board almost fully staffed. We have a couple of vacancies, but we're trying to pull in some planning commission members as well. And I am excited to see the future of what the Environmental Advisory Council can do. We've been, in my time here, in the past almost 2 years at the township, we've been working on a lot of things that I see fitting really well with this board. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go around and do some brief introductions, mostly for the new person. I know a lot of you guys know each other, but it's helpful for me as well. And I guess we'll kind of start with Tom. Just
Tom Patrici, Township Manager. Mike Elias, Utilities and MS4 Coordinator.
Wait, what is it, Mike?
Utilities and MS4 Coordinator, Stormwater.
Okay, I was like,
Water, sewer, storm.
that used to be yours. Am I correct?
I had storm when I first started.
Okay,
here
that's
also.
how I first mentioned. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, I'm Frank Petroselli.
so, Frank, if you can, for our members, I'd like to know the years in the
Oh,
township,
sure.
what inspired you to join the EAC, and what do you hope to get out of this experience?
Okay. Yeah, my wife and I, our family lived in the township since 2002, so 22 years. I was formerly a member of the Green Advisory Council for 3.5 years and chaired that for 2.5 years, 3 years. Through my work, I'm a chemical engineer, have been exposed to a lot of technology issues around waste handling, so I think there's a lot of issues there that things that we're going to have to do differently over time. Spend a lot of time on looking at renewable energy, so that could be something down the road. So just, from the standpoint, I think there's a lot of things that everybody's doing today that are not really sustainable, and they're going to have to change over time. And I think, I'm interested in helping with it.
Excellent. I was worried you were going to say you were exposed to a lot of chemicals.
And it's not sustainable.
Thank you, Frank.
Let me explain some of my behavior.
Happy to have you.
Okay, Marie North, we moved to the township in the end of 1987, so we've been here almost 37 years, which is really surprising to me, quickly that's gone by. What inspired me to join the EAC? I was with the Green Advisory Council. They were a very talented and committed group of people, so I learned a lot from them, and I saw what can be done going forward. So when they talked about, okay, the EAC, would you like to apply for that, interview for it? I thought, okay, this is the next step. What do I hope to get out of this group? I think it's like, what do I hope to give to this group? What do I hope to give to the township? Because I have a variety of experiences with different environmental things within my personal life and groups that I belong to. And as Frank said, we have a lot to do. There's a lot going on out there that needs to be addressed in some way. So that's my goal with this group, hoping that I can give something that is going to be of value and help us move forward with some of the environmental issues we have.
Thank you, Marie.
Yep.
Derek Pinkham, I've been in the township almost 5 years. I've been in Upper Mac for about 15 before then. I'm a geologist with the Navy. Currently I do environmental cleanup work. I've been doing that for a long time. So I've got the environmental background with that. I know a lot of the rules, regulations for things, mostly the cleanup work. So I too have been exposed to lots of chemicals over the years. Just, I guess, being Upper Mac, it was a big warehouse thing, kind of wanted to move from Facebook complaints to seeing if there was something I could actually do. So that's kind of my goal here, is to, kind of push as much of the guidance towards things I believe in, and, want to get done.
Great.
Mark Vassis, sorry, I do not have all the environmental background. I'm just a businessman. I was in surgical equipment sales for forever. I'm quasi-retired and I love the township. I've lived here for 32 years, 33 years. And it just, if I can help out, I'm on a number of boards, some that I'm the president of. So I just thought, like you, Marie, I just want to give back. I love living here and want to keep it home.
Just a quick interjection. That's great. One thing that when I came here and kind of interacted with a lot of these faces, and I was astounded at the environmental background that everybody had. Usually it's not. Usually it's just a passion. So don't let these guys overwhelm you. We're happy to have you.
Yeah. I'll get over it.
Herb Bender, Director of Township Operations.
Cool. Like I said, thank everyone. The other missing member is Sarah. She's enjoying herself in Mexico. I don't know why she's in Mexico and not here, but we'll see her next month. And there's still 2 vacancies on this board. So if you have anyone that, that might have an interest in this, send them our way and, we'll see how they fit. What I wanted to do is kind of just give like a high level overview. In your packet, you have a lot of great information. I want to point to the guidebook here, Environmental Advisory Council Handbook. This is a tremendous resource. So in a nutshell, what is an EAC? It's actually state legislation from 1973. Act 177 or Act 148 was the original authorization to create these environmental advisory boards to do kind of what we've all talked about. We want to, as Derek mentioned, you might have a passion about something. How do you take that passion, that knowledge, and get it through the challenging municipal process? This is a way for you to bring all of your passion and knowledge to us, and for us to kind of share, ideas in the room, and to talk about what are the environmental issues on our township. How do we work then with the rest of the legislative body and the rest of the staff to address these sort of things, and how do we put some of these ideas into action? We've had our Environmental Advisory Council since the 70s. The authorization was updated in 1996. It was amended in 96. And within that, there's really good guidance in here as to what other EACs are doing, start to give you ideas of what we can think about. It's also important here what EACs don't do. We talk about kind of the advocacy is one thing, but then this is also a functional board of the township. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as well. These are public meetings. We invite the public to attend. We take minutes on these, and we look at this as an arm of the township. There's many other boards, commissions. I see this group working very closely with our planning commission. We hope to have a planning commission member on this board. I see us working with the Park and Recreation Board as well. When it comes to some of the things later, we'll talk about open space. And we have lots of support with township staff. That's the other thing too. It was an education for me coming into this township to see the capacity of our staff. We have great folks here that a lot of times if if we talk about something in here, there's a lot that we can do with that in-house and without the need for a ton of consultants, without putting so much of a burden on our volunteers and on this board. And I know that sometimes that can be stressful too as a volunteer member. If you want to make a change, but I only have an hour a month. Well, we have a lot of staff here, 8 to 4 every day who can help carry a lot of this forward. So as I mentioned, the handbook is in here. If you look in your packet, kind of your other guiding document will be this, the updated EAC ordinance. So we heard a lot before about the GAC, the Green Advisory Council. As I mentioned, the township has had an EAC since 1973. last year, and I know this is kind of recap for most of you, but for some of our newer members, last year we adopted the township's comprehensive plan, which really kind of sets the foundation for what we're doing from a policy perspective. One of the things we've looked at in the comprehensive plan is how do we align a lot of our boards more closely so that they can kind of function in step, and just a lot of cleanup in the guidelines for these boards. What we've done with this new Environmental Advisory Council ordinance is we have taken the ideas of the Green Advisory Council, the old Environmental Advisory Council from the 70s, and there is something called the Air Pollution Board that was never really staffed from the 70s as well. We've taken all of those, combined it into this new ordinance, and we've looked at our resources that we have available to us from the state and from other EACs in the area to try to put together what we think is an appropriate, functional Environmental Advisory Council ordinance for us to use kind of as our guiding North Star. So in here, there's kind of all the whereas mumbo jumbo, but I think the important thing to note is the membership. Environmental Advisory Council shall be composed of 7 residents of the township appointed by the township commissioners. Whenever possible, 1 member shall also be of the planning commission. So the 4 of you are all now appointed members. Each member shall serve for a term of 3 years. Terms shall be staggered. I think what you've seen, because this is a new board, I think we have some staggered terms in there. We have like some 1-year and 2-year terms just so we can start that staggering process. And then we'll go through the reappointments when those have been reached. Vacancies, we don't have any other applications for this, but we're looking to fill vacancies as much as we can. It's great to have a full board for this. Removal of members, I don't think we'll ever need to get to that point, but just have that in there so that if we need to, there is actually a process in the First Class Township Code to remove members if necessary, and that's for all of our boards. And then, so I'm looking at page 3 of 6 on the ordinance. Jurisdiction, duties, and responsibilities. I'm going to actually move to that. So, the jurisdiction of the Environmental Advisory Council shall be limited to advising the commissioners and other duly established boards, commissions, and committees of the township on matters dealing with the protection, conservation, management, promotion, and use of natural resources located within the territorial limits of the township of South Whitehall. Specific duties will include: number 1, to identify environmental problems and recommend plans and programs for conservation of natural resources and protection and improvement of environmental quality. Number 2, in conjunction with the Park and Recreation Board, to make recommendations as to possible uses of open space areas. Number 3, to promote a community environmental program. Number 4, to keep an index of all open space areas, publicly and privately owned, including but not limited to flood-prone areas, swamps, and other unique areas for the purpose of obtaining information on the proper use of such areas. Number 5, to advise the appropriate township governmental agency in the acquisition of property, both real and personal, by gift, purchase, grant, bequest, easement, devise, or lease, and matters dealing with the purposes of this article. And number 6, the Environmental Advisory Council shall review subdivision and land development plans in accordance with the Subdivision Land Development Ordinance, limited to matters pertaining to the foregoing subject matter. The findings of this review shall be prepared and sent to the Planning Commission as recommendations. So those 6 items are essentially that's where our kind of duties lie. There's a lot in there. One of the things we wanted to make sure in updating this ordinance was that we had the appropriate language in there to have this board function and be able to work closely with those other boards, as I mentioned. And I see this as really something to revisit as we're going through this and see how we can make sure we're fulfilling these duties. Some of them will wait a little bit just because we do need to make some changes in things like the subdivision land development ordinance to provide more clear guidelines on this board's role in that. But this is a really good kind of spot to step back to when you're looking at how can I, provide the most information and be the most functional as a member of this board. Environmental Advisory Council shall hold two regular meetings, minimum 2 times in a year. We're looking to have this monthly. And for every meeting, we have an agenda and take appropriate minutes. As the staff member assigned to this board, I will take on the role of almost secretary, where I will prepare the agenda in advance. If you do have any agenda items that you would like for the upcoming meeting, feel free to email or call me about those, and I can add them to the agenda. It makes it easier for us to kind of, as staff, keep a hold of all the records. And then, as I mentioned, I record these meetings for my notes, and then I'll prepare minutes for that. And I will try to get this out to you probably the Thursday or Friday before the Monday meeting, so that you have the time over the weekend to review minutes from the last meeting, what is on the upcoming agenda, and any other relevant information in the packet, so that when we come into this meeting, we can get right to work. Does anyone have any questions on this kind of piece of it? The rest of the ordinance is really just the other sort of legal piece of how we advertise and things like that.
Question for you, Chris. What Monday of the month is it? Is it always?
Fourth Monday of every month. So the only issue is next month, when we have the fourth Monday is Memorial Day. So we have advertised that meeting to be on I believe it's the 20th, May 20th.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, because I'm on the board of Lehigh Valley Humane Society in Oakmont, Tennis, and they like the second Monday, the first Monday.
Okay.
And so it just worked out. So I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna have an issue if it's, but I was wondering why this one I can make and the others.
Yeah,
This one I
it's
can make
only because of that weird.
Totally understand, no problem. It won't be it next month's meeting.
Yeah, and these meetings are set and advertised through the rest of the year. We advertise them at the beginning of the calendar years with the other boards that we have. I think it's appropriate for us to meet every month. I think we'll have enough on the agendas. And by ordinance, we only need to meet twice a year. If we need to cancel meetings, or if we find that there's a schedule conflict that comes up. For example, the Park and Recreation Board, over time, they stopped meeting so much in the summer. I think they take like 2 months off in the summer because you're usually out recreating. And a lot of these people are either, coaches or something related to that. So if we ever find ourselves with a meeting conflict, we can revisit that. Any other questions on kind of the jurisdiction, duties, and responsibilities? Cool.
Okay.
Okay, just a quick question here, Chris. To keep an index of all the open space areas,
So
get that from you or?
yeah, so what I want to get to kind of in this next section is I want to go through some ideas that I had I want to develop a work plan. I think it would be helpful for us to start to think about like an annual work plan where we can kind of put big ideas on paper, and then as things come up. What I want to do today is start to give you guys some feedback for some thoughts that have been bubbling in my head for this board to consider. And then, so I have these little worksheets here in your packet for you that has all the duties and responsibilities, one on each page. My thought was we can go through, I can give you kind of my high level ideas of things that have come up related to some of the plans and programs that we're working on, and you can kind of take some notes, but I'd like if the members could take this home, jot down your ideas, see how this stuff meshes together, and then maybe at next month's meeting, we kind of take this and we work on developing a work plan that then we can have as our kind of guidelines for the rest of this year. And it gives us an idea of what kind of program. So to answer your question, Marie, I think that's where we'll kind of highlight it in a couple of these of what I was thinking there. I also think that, so usually we would do election of officers. Since we're brand new, I thought maybe we can push off on that. Sarah's not here. Mark won't be here next month. Maybe we kind of do the work plan and then look at election of officers maybe in July. That sounds good to everybody.
Yeah, you don't make me an officer when I'm not there.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Don't do that. I know. I've seen that before. And congratulations, you're another president.
You've been voluntold. I've seen it done before.
Chris, would it make sense for the members to prioritize the duties and responsibilities?
I don't think so. I think that I think they kind of come into play at different times throughout the year, and there's other different programs. So, for example, there's a lot of things in here with open space and open space areas. Right now, with what we have going on, there's a lot that I think we could be doing this year with that. But in the next few years, it's not going to be as much work in the beginning. It'll be more review and related to things like that. So my suggestion is I wouldn't prioritize them. I think they all kind of stand on their own.
Okay, understood.
So, but I think we can do you mean prioritize for the work plan?
Yeah, the work plan, like, so that, because this, when you look at this, right, this is a lot of stuff. And it's so I'm just trying to maybe help assist with EAC to kind of come up with the work plan going forward, so that, like they can start churning out these deliverables.
Yes, no, that is sorry, I misunderstood the question there. So I think that is something to think about. I kind of, shotgun approach with a lot of this from me on things that we have going on in the township right now, things for you guys to kind of sink your teeth into and think about. But as you're kind of workshopping this over the next month, definitely start to think about, hey, this is something we can do. I like to say, like, what's our low hanging fruit, kind of get going, see how, we function as a board and something to focus on, especially because some of this will have to wait. So if we want to take a look at
Chris, it seems like there's clearly some short-term versus long-term things on the list here, right? So.
Yeah, and if you guys want to start to think about that, and we can kind of see where next month when we review it, we can kind of give you an idea of, is there something that it could be done a little bit more short-term because we have, either a project in place, or we have a consultant on board, or staff is prepared to work on it, or so.
I think the thing I'd suggest we be careful about, though, is that we don't just build a work plan with just short-term stuff, right? Because then we never get the long-term stuff. So I think we gotta, for the long-term stuff, we probably should try to carve out at least a couple things we can do to move those forward in the work plan for this year, right? So.
Yeah, but they should coincide with the comp plan almost at the same time as we're redoing all that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just how I look at it,
Yeah.
because like your open space, you have how you want to do open space with the landscaping. And so some of that is going to be long-term. How do we establish what's what in the open space with the landscaping? But I do agree with you, Frank, that it does have to be mingled together. So, because if we just have short-term vision, we're never going to get to that long-term.
But Herb, I mean, to your point, I think one of the shortcomings of the advisory council was that there was no connection to any kind of bigger plan. So I think, with the comp plan, we absolutely should be looking for this group's plan to link with that. And I think that's that allows us to get things done, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that connects with the open space and the landscapes plan, which comes from the comp plan. So it should all flow together. It's just a question of managing that.
Yeah, so for next month, what I'll do is, if you guys don't have it, I mean, it's on the township website. I know a lot of you have seen it already, but definitely take a look at the township's comprehensive plan adopted last year. And then we're hoping to maybe have a rough draft of the landscapes plan, which is the open space, historic preservation, agricultural preservation, and natural resource preservation plan that was recommended out of the comp plan. So we're working on that. We've been working on that for about a year now. And I'm hoping to have somewhat of a draft for you guys to look at there. And there's a lot of things in there that tie into this. We are purposely trying to look at in the landscapes plan, what is a good function in there, highlighting like, hey, this would be a great EAC activity. And there's a lot of even more recommendations out of that plan of some of these kind of long-term goals. So as we're thinking about this, I love the idea, Frank, to start thinking about, what are some short-term actions and long-term actions. So for duty responsibility number 1, identifying environmental problems, recommending plans, programs. This one, I think we have what we think is a good list of things that we have seen as far as staff, things that we've heard through public engagement, through the comprehensive plan, through the public engagement from the landscapes plan as far as preservation needs. But this is one where, you guys came here for a reason. You either see an issue that should be addressed, or you see something that should be preserved, or so start to think about what are, as residents of the township, what are the environmental issues that affect our township. And in specific to the township, like sea level rise, isn't really affecting, South Whitehall, but start to think about that. And this is where we can kind of jot these ideas down. And then what I would suggest we do with this is start to use that as kind of the reoccurring thing to start addressing, what actions should go into the work plan to start to think about addressing those issues. So some of my suggested topics or issues, open space preservation, obviously a very big one. It's almost a foundational piece of the landscapes plan. It's come up as a huge priority through all of the engagement that we've had. Naturalized open space is kind of what we've been talking about, what Herb had mentioned, looking at taking some of our areas that might be, 20 acres of just open lawn that's not used for anything, and is there a way to, consider naturalizing that so it has a better functionality? Recycling and yard waste, I think that's always a topic of mind. One of the big things we have going on right now with that is looking at an evaluation of our recycling and yard waste program. I'm hoping that we can bring some of the results of that study to this board and to talk about, is there a way for the EAC to get involved in some of the outreach that's associated with that, talking about, for example, how much are we recycling and how much can we just avoid throwing into the recycling that ends up going not to the recycling by, using less. So you guys are kind of the experts in that. And that's where we really want to see what are some of the things we should be thinking about there. Climate resiliency is just another one. I know we had a speaker in, I think, last year talking about doing some resiliency studying. We've kind of touched upon it a little bit in the comprehensive plan, but we haven't done a deep dive into an assessment of that in our township. And I know Frank kind of mentioned sustainability and sustainability, triple bottom line, all aspects of it. I think this could be really something that we don't have a good vision on right now, but I think it's definitely of interest in the township to do something there, and welcome your thoughts on what kind of actions or things we can do to look into that. What I put in here down below is so township responsibilities. Like I mentioned, a lot of this, don't feel overburdened with some of this stuff. There's a lot of things that we can help you with as far as staff. There's a lot of things that we can provide you with, and we can certainly add to this if you say, hey, we need to know, Marie, to your point, an index of open space that you guys as the staff, that's where we'll put down, staff will provide, a map to start with, and then you guys would do that. So for this one, there's not much, and this is where I welcome any questions you have or any thoughts that you have on what we can do to help you guys with developing this list of environmental problems. That's kind of my first shot at it. I don't know if other staff has other thoughts on things that we hear that we should be considering, throwing it out to the group of other environmental issues. But that's where we can kind of give you some thoughts on what we're hearing.
I'm surprised the stormwater is not on this though.
Yeah.
That was something we talked about a lot, and obviously like contributing a lot to what the previous group did in that regard, so.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. So I think it's a good spot to start, and then I guess I'll challenge you guys with what is the issue we're looking to address? Because stormwater is such a big topic, and what are some of the things we can start to think about? And that's where it's helpful to have someone like Mike, where like if Mike recognizes things
Like
that
educating people what can't go into stormwater, right? So.
Yeah.
A lot of runoff type chemicals and things of that nature that contaminate stormwater that, I think we could probably have a role there in educating the community on how to properly address stormwater.
Yeah, I feel like
community education. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can tie into the landscapes plan of why you want the no mow zones for maybe twice a year to help with the filtration of the MS4 runoff of the field, get some of the sedimentation out of it.
Yeah, I think water quality in general should be on the list, in terms of, even the Jordan Creek and improving the baseline water quality.
A lot of these events, we do that for the community.
Yeah.
I will be at most of these with a table and a lot of them speaking to a lot of the youth about those exact things.
Did I hear the last township meeting that the township was hired, I believe they're called landscape services out of land studies.
Yeah.
That's it. I've heard about that.
So we're doing a preliminary study to see what options are available for Covered Bridge Park upstream and downstream to see with the existing topography and the existing features as they are now.
Yeah, because there's so much damage that's been done and continues to be done, which circles us back to climate resiliency. Because we're getting hammered.
Damage and development.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is great.
Does a little Lehigh run through our township, South Whitehall Township?
Peter Creek does.
Peter does.
Yeah.
Little
Down by Dillon.
I don't know where Dylan is, I'm sorry.
It's over by Kilmer and Springhouse Road.
Okay,
Yeah, right by there.
okay,
It runs through the golf course eventually then down.
okay, gotcha. Is that considered clean at that
Our
point?
part is okay, but right outside of the township, there's a TMDL for the amount of sediment, which is TMDL.
Total maximum.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We need to know these.
Yeah, so the city has that on them, South Whitehall Township currently does not.
Okay. It's primarily a dry creek bed. Until it rains, and it fills up, and then it'll go dry again for sometimes months on end. But it looks like a dry creek bed until it rains. Then it's
So all our sediment washes to Allentown, and Allentown ends up with the problem.
You guys have a lot too. Like I live right over there. I think once before I had mentioned, I interviewed at the job for Allentown for them before, so I did a bunch of research back then, and yeah,
It's literally, you could look on one side of the bridge at ours, it looks beautiful. You go down over to the other side, and you can see all the sediment laying there.
a little wash out of there.
Wow.
What's funny though, it comes from the cornfield, like it's like open space.
Yeah. I would love to come up with a way how we make farmers put a buffer area around their fields.
Well, add it to your worksheet there, Herb. Yeah, no, this is good. And that's what I want to kind of keep moving on, just to kind of high level, give you guys my thoughts on what some of this is.
Mike, is there anything in the MS4 permit that's been causing issues, like, that we can kind of maybe?
Causing issues? No.
Okay.
You think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really causing issues.
Or I guess things that can be fixed, I guess, maybe, like a better term.
A lot of the complaints we get are civil, homeowner to homeowner, a lot of things like that. Our permit covers the construction aspects, like pre-construction, during construction. It's a lot of our permit. most of the complaints we get from residents are due to lack of curbing, things like that, that don't convey stormwater properly when there's no curb. So, you know, he turned his roof leader towards my house, you know, that type of stuff, which ends up really being like a civil issue. It's not really in our permit that stringent like that called out. So, but yeah, I'll think about it and come up with some stuff, some ideas that deal with our permit directly.
And Mike, the Little Creek, the one you just mentioned.
Little Cedar.
Little Cedar is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can certainly provide a watershed map for the board. And yeah, we're definitely gonna get into a ton of mapping. So a lot of this stuff will pop up and we'll kind of familiarize ourselves with the resources in the township. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific to stormwater that would be helpful to think about.
Real quick, let
yeah.
me be clear. So the permit and our ordinance, two different things, right? So our permit, one thing that this group could do, I think, would be the education portion of it, because there's a lot of public outreach, right? So I was kind of talking more about our ordinance, a little less about our permit, but our permit does require that we're doing what we're for stormwater with you guys. So having you guys involved in this is a big part of one of those minimum things that we need to do in our permit as per DEP. So, sorry, just to be
And
clear.
then that's what you're talking about.
Yes, 100%.
One of the things.
That's so clear about it, yeah.
Mike, can I like simply summarize that like for the next meeting thing, or to give them something to think about, just like, hey, here's some stuff that like, do we have guidelines?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll work with you on
Can I have
that.
a copy of the whole permit? It's all public knowledge.
Well, I don't know if everyone wants to read through the whole, I mean, these guys might want to read through the whole.
It's
permit.
actually basically an outreach guide, don't we?
Yeah, I can give,
Yeah, we have that.
simply come from our minimum control measures. We can break
Cool.
those down. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I can show them your PRP, pollutant reduction plan.
Yeah. Yeah. We can do a lot.
We have a ton of stuff. Yeah, so in like the proposed activities at the end, kind of to Frank's question about like short-term and long-term, this is where like just some of the things to highlight, you know, when we have the landscapes plan, natural resources chapter, I talked about the solid waste recycling evaluation that we're doing once we get kind of feedback from that, and the preliminary recommendations from that. We'll get that over to you guys. The thing that is of interest to me, and I'm glad you brought it up, Frank, Sustainable Pennsylvania certification program. This has been something that's been kind of on my desk in the background for a while. Sustainable PA does a certification program. I'd love to kind of look into this and see if there's components that we should start to think about, if it's something that might make sense for us as a municipality to consider. There's a lot of stuff that's outside of the kind of purview of this board that deals with like financial management and things like that. But I think it's also just a good guiding document for some of the things that we want to consider to address sustainability in our township. So I can also provide that just easily for you guys. So moving on to the second duty.
And Chris,
That was all one.
That was one. That's why I want to kind of keep it. That's a big one.
That sounds like pretty long term to me. It's
Yeah.
gonna take a year to get through job one.
right?
Well, the goal is let's come up with reasonable actions for this year. Those are just, you know, thoughts. Yeah.
So
We
that's
shoot for the stars.
Sustainable Pennsylvania, that's a certification for townships.
For the township,
That's
yes,
what I
yeah.
looked at, okay.
There's like bronze,
Mhm.
silver, and gold.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And what are we?
No, we don't know. We're not in charge.
Here can be an
All right. Duty number 2 is the working with the Park and Rec Board to make recommendations to the possible use of open space areas. This one I think is kind of a long-term down the line. One of the things that we kind of talked about, Herb mentioned, is looking at naturalizing open space. So this ties into the South Whitehall Landscapes Plan. One of the actions we're doing there is actually looking at trying to classify open space in our township. And we have some kind of parameters on what would be, what's a passive park versus a naturalized area versus an active park, that sort of thing. So once we kind of get through that, it would be great for us to start to look at, is there opportunities to work with Public Works, look at what's in our park and recreation plan, what's in our landscapes plan, and look at things to make recommendations to the naturalization of open space in areas that's appropriate.
Which this, in this township, I don't mean that negative or anything, is gonna take a lot of work. Because when we let the grass get 6 inches high, the complaints come. So when we go to this no mow, natural, it is gonna take a lot of educating these residents in these neighborhoods where these areas are gonna be to how it betters us. Because the first call I get, soon as the grass in an open space area is 6 inches, do you know how many bugs you're putting in my yard? I can't even sit out back at night.
Mice, snakes.
Yeah, so it's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of educating these residents of what good this is doing. Don't always just look at the negative side effect of it.
Do we have an inventory of all of our environmentally sensitive areas? So like wetlands, vernal pools?
That's a good question. That, I think, is kind of what Marie was asking. So the one of the things we want to do is go through that process with these guys. So we have a ton of resources in GIS that we looked at during the comprehensive plan, and we looked at in the landscapes plan. What I'd like to do is kind of bring all of that and sit down and talk about what are we missing as far as data sources, what are the things that we should be looking at as what are environmentally sensitive areas, and then take that and go through a process of actually trying to prioritize preservation areas. So we often, kind of in the GIS world, we look at where things are overlapping and kind of you get the most bang for your buck as far as, you have a really sensitive habitat that's part of a stream corridor, that's part of like carbon sequestration area. You have
slopes.
Yeah, you have all that together, and that's a super high priority. You slap a development there where you're taking away all those natural resources. So that's definitely kind of the long term with short term chunks that I see working through this board. This is an interesting board. We definitely have kind of a review aspect and a administrative aspect, but I think a lot of our meetings are going to be kind of more workshop based too. So I'm excited about that. And that's where, in this one, what we'll do is get a list of the township open spaces. Again, we want to kind of go first and get all that as our kind of guiding document for what is open space. One of the things we'll look at is how are open space now. So kind of working with Herb and Public Works and Parks and Recreation, and really stormwater too. I mean, there's a lot of things that we look at. There might be a stormwater basin that we want to consider naturalizing, but we just can't do it because of the BMPs that are there, the functionality of that basin. So I think that it's kind of pulling together a lot of information. So the proposed activities for this is where I look at in the landscapes plan, we'll give you guys kind of that the open space classifications. We'll start to dig through those. We actually kind of like feedback on some of that maybe at the next meeting as we can kind of get that together. Looking at our parks and recreation plan, we adopted a comprehensive park and recreation plan last year. So that had some recommendations for areas as well. We don't want to look at naturalizing something that's saying, hey, this is a great location for a brand new ball field. That was a high priority. Talking about our township management strategies, as Herb mentioned, we do things a certain way. If we are looking to, change that, we need to be prepared for the impact of that and kind of get ahead of that. The other thing I'll kind of throw out there for you guys to think about is, education-wise, like how can we help curb that? How can we help get the word out to people? How can we help the understanding the naturalization of open space or the management of open space in a different way? So good educational examples and things like that.
Do you want a quick one real quick? Are in there or just, you're talking overview?
Overview, yeah, I mean, but
Okay.
yeah, write it all down. And I don't want to hold you guys here all night. I think it's okay if we run over a little bit.
Believe me, first good talk.
Yeah. No problem. Herb's here to kick me under the desk. Because I think number 3 is an important one for you guys to really kind of chew on. Promote a community environmental program. That's all this stuff together. What's your voice to the community? How do we talk to people about addressing environmental concerns? How do we hear environmental concerns? And how do we prepare the appropriate education, literature, and resources to sort of stand behind the actions that we're talking about making? And there's a lot of different things, talking about naturalization, talking about recycling, talking about sustainability, talking about good forest management, water quality, electricity use, all of this kind of stuff. So I'd say this is where, let's get these ideas, see where they fit. And to me, this is very much a kind of like the communications plan, I think, to people. And this is also where, I mean, I would love to see if this board is interested in getting more involved in community and township events and things like that. I think in your packet, I provided you a list of some of our recreational events that I pulled. That might be a good tabling opportunity. I know if Sarah were here, I'm sure she would be kind of all over this, looking at areas that we can get out. But so these are existing events for this year. I think it'd be great. This is a perfect way to reach, 30 to 100 residents that if we had a good community education program and good literature behind it, we can talk about, hey, from one resident to another, do you know that this is how you're impacting our local waterway, our habitat, our municipality? On that note, we just had our Earth Day event over the weekend. Typically, the Earth Day event is it's kind of like a project in the park. Usually, I think this year we did some mulching, things like that. I would like to start to think about Earth Day for next year and see if there's thoughts on how we can, make this a good celebration. I know a lot of environmental advisory councils and other municipalities do a lot of planning for their Earth Day event. It's a great way to reach people. It's a good topic to get people to come out and learn about the environment. And so this is one where it's not all on you guys to come up with everything, but get us your ideas and we can kind of do this and we'll sort of work through the content together. But we have a lot of capabilities within the township to get this stuff prepared and put on the website and flesh out information, get in the newsletter and prepare some materials.
I mean,
Go ahead, Frank, I'm sorry.
you mentioned channels. I think that's really critical because there is a lot of good information available. I just don't think, expecting people to go find it on the website is really very effective, right? So I think one thing we can do as a group is to figure out what are better channels for getting the information in front of people, right? And so whether that's events or, being at events or sponsoring talks here in the township building that people can come to, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, I think
series or something.
Yeah, the safety day is very good. So if you can get something together, last year there was over 300 people who attended that event. So.
One thing we're working on too is an e-newsletter through Constant Contact. So people can sign up with their email. You could, get more of your day-to-day type notifications because Nixle is more for emergency alert advisories. So we're trying to have that where we push out information on a regular basis.
Yeah, the more we can push things to people, I think the better, the more likely they are to see it, right? I mean, as opposed to expecting them to go find it.
Yeah, the thing I like about the e-newsletter, it gives us a chance to do something very topic related, or if it's like right now we're doing the South Whitehall landscapes plan. So there's a great, existing plan. Sometimes there's meetings, we can point to that, but it also gives us the ability to do something out of, just here's your monthly conservation tip sort of thing that's going to people. And we highlight something that's not necessarily tied to exactly a project at the time. Definitely think about that one. We're really excited to kind of get your thoughts on that. Duty responsibility number 4 goes back to the open space. This is the index of open space. Again, this is where we'll create that map. I see this happening very quickly after we get through the landscapes plan, and I see it certainly over the summer kind of doing a lot of mapping exercises. And again, we'll bring everything and then you guys kind of give us an idea of, hey, include this, or here's what we should look at. I think it'd be fun for us to kind of workshop this around the table. And then where this goes is this could lead to updates to the township's official map. This could lead to updates to some of the management strategies that we talked about. So I think this is certainly high priority for me right now as far as like actions. And I think there's a lot that it can help us with. Duty responsibility number 5, advising on the acquisition of property. This is related to conservation, open space, that sort of thing, as specified in the ordinance. So this one is kind of that second phase of as we are looking at our open spaces, both the current public open spaces that we have, but I also want to look at doing maybe some resource prioritization with this board across the township, looking at open spaces that aren't publicly owned, and this kind of helps with, are we going to put something onto the official map that the township may be able to acquire as far as a property or protect via an easement, whether it's high priority. We want to develop a process that this board could help advise in that. So if we have an opportunity to protect a piece of property, we would run it through kind of our system here and see how it ranks and see if it's worth preserving it. I think it gives it a good sort of additional perspective of us discussing in this sort of forum here to say, yes, this is high priority resource, this is identified in our mapping, and we'll work on kind of developing that component. So this is certainly coming out of the recommendation of the landscapes plan. There's nothing right now that this is happening, but this is kind of one of those long-term goals to think about. And when it comes up, we'll be excited to look at.
So Chris, who would be the entity that would bring potential properties to us?
Yeah, staff would bring it as far as, so I think my thought.
Who identifies potential properties, I guess.
My thought has been, and we've been discussing this in community development, is if we go through sort of not looking at properties, but looking at resources with the township, with this board, and we're identifying where our highest resources are, and we kind of have this evaluation. And then depending on our ability as a municipality to reach out to private property owners, we may be able to look at, well, this property has it's the 90th percentile of highest priority for us. Maybe we can actually reach out to that landowner and look at protecting something. Sometimes we even get possible donations. Sometimes through land developments, we get an opportunity to look at open spaces in addition to whatever is being developed. And I think going back to kind of these resource maps, we would task this board with looking at does it satisfy the resources that we're talking about. And so as far as when it comes up, it's not this board saying, hey, let's go with that property. It's more we would bring something when it's ready to be sort of evaluated. But I think the resource analysis helps direct us if there is an opportunity to reach out to private landowner.
Would farmland preservation be part of this? Or?
I think so, yeah. So the landscapes plan, we talk about farmland preservation, natural resource preservation, historic preservation. Where I see historic tying into this is we often talk about historic context. So you might have a building that is very important historically. That building is useless if there's an apartment around it. So it's kind of it's the structure, but it's also the character of that area. So looking at preserving the land around something historic, I think is also something that we would bring forward here. And But I don't really see this board necessarily going through we actually have we're doing a historic resource inventory right now that we have an expert who's preparing all the background knowledge on, what's historic and what's not.
And one thing that's to the benefit of this group is the fact that some of these communities in the area have been doing these evaluations for almost 20 years now. So we can look to what works, what doesn't, and try to tailor it to South Whitehall's needs specifically. So that can be a benefit in that sense.
And the last one, this is one that we'll kind of have to put on the shelf for a little bit. But this is where we talk about the subdivision land development plan review. Right now, the subdivision and land development ordinance, SALDO, doesn't specify or clearly recognize this board as it does in other reviews. So we'll need to update SALDO for that because this is kind of a new board. What we'll do with that is give you almost a checklist of things to go through so that we can kind of clearly identify where like the jurisdiction of this board is when it comes to reviewing a land development plan. A good example is right before this meeting, we had our Landscape and Shade Tree Commission. They have a very clear jurisdiction of what they look at. They look at trees in the right of way. They look at buffers, buffer strips between properties when zoning calls for it. And that's kind of the extent of their work so that they're not saying, hey, I don't like, the shape of this building or, or they're not digging into stormwater or something like that. It's a little bit more clearly defined because we do have technical engineers to work on all the other reviews. So our vision for this is that we would take kind of as we're going through all these exercises and identifying that sort of resource map. We also have the resource preservation goals of the landscapes plan, put that into kind of a checklist for you guys to feel comfortable going through. And we would bring in a land development plan, you look at it, and you kind of go through your list. Does it have this? Does it have that? You make comments on things. And then we take those comments back to the planning commission. And then those comments are considered in the planning commission's review. And sometimes we bring plans back to the landscape and shade tree. Sometimes we look at them 2 or 3 times, until those comments are addressed. But like I mentioned, there's still a lot to kind of get to that piece of it. So right now, I don't see much happening for 2024. But so it's a lot of
Not
stuff.
much to do.
Yeah. I'd rather give you more to think about, and let's kind of take a month and workshop it, and we'll whittle it down. And if it's okay with you guys, we'll come in next month and we'll get your kind of thoughts and start to develop a work plan. Sound good? The last couple of things on the agenda, I mentioned the outreach calendar. This kind of fit into one of the resources. I already kind of went over that, but something to think about. If you guys are interested in developing kind of that the message behind, the Environmental Advisory Council, if you maybe want to kind of work together and target one of these events, we can work with Linda Tula, our Park and Rec manager, and make sure, you have a table there. I mean, she said definitely, one of these movies would be great. I think one of the movies we're going to have in June is actually going to be right out here on the municipal lawn. So that's kind of an interesting one. It gets people to this site, whereas the others are in the parks that people are they go to the park that's near them. I think it was Lynn's suggestion, looking at the Halloween spooktacular, having an EAC themed car. If you guys want to think about something like that. But yeah, so these events are here, and anything you might be interested in, let's talk about it and we can make sure we get it onto the schedule. Agenda item 6, courtesy of the floor. I know I've talked almost at you guys for about an hour. Anything else?
I know better than to do that.
Okay.
And I mean, I like the way that what we're talking about dovetails with a lot of other things that are priorities for the township. So I think that's, this feels like we're integrated in this effort.
Thank you. I that's the hope. we want to make sure that we're giving you guys guidance to kind of, direct where your thoughts can go. And we hope that we can do a lot of cool stuff here. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we don't know everything that's going on. So that's where, as you're developing this work plan, if there's things that we're completely missing, bring it up. Let's see how this board can kind of address it and what we can do. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
All right. Any second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.